Greetings. I'm going to call this a MGTOW stream of consciousness. Now, of course, I always do this sort of thing. This is off the cuff. Not always, but very often. But this is an indirect response, video response to a question, sort of a question. It wasn't very clear. Posited by, I believe his name is Jedi Master Too Cool. And I'm going to summarize, paraphrase what he asked. He asked that he suggested that no MGTOW channel to date has discussed, the future. What's the future of men and MGTOW? And I disagree. He cited some videos where I posited different situations. So first, above all, I want to address that question. What does the future of MGTOW entail? Now, it is true that in the past, I've made various videos, which were essentially, if you think about them, if-then clauses, concatenation of, if this were to happen, then that could also happen. But these, I'm neither a seer nor a prognosticator. I don't know what the future entails exactly. I can only right now make a prediction, essentially, based on what I've observed in the years I've been around here. Well, to be perfectly honest, and I will be honest, I'm not going to make some grandiose prophecy because it would be ludicrous and it would be foreign to the reality we're living in. The truth is, that's Stephen Moyer's favorite line, just kidding. The truth is, though, that not much. I don't see a grand future for MGTOW. What is MGTOW, by the way? I'm not trying to define it just yet. This has been debated and talked about, perhaps ad nauseum. But what MGTOW is in its functionality, in its outward appearance, if you will, that is what we see on the internet. I mean, MGTOW is just, at the end of the day, a bunch of guys, some of whom make videos, some not, some just leave comments, talking about issues that pertain to men, sometimes not directly to that, pertaining to men's issues, exchanging ideas occasionally. And the only difference I see between now and the future, or even a few years back, is effectively some growth in the amount of people producing videos, for example. I've spied some of these videos, and actually I have considered, and probably will eventually get to it, I considered compiling a list and then posting links of some of the newcomers whose material I think is good. I mean, there are a lot of new MGTOW channels popping up. There's no doubt about that. Some are quite good. Some are pretty mediocre, to be honest. And, that's always the case with everything. But certainly there's been an increase in numbers. What does the future hold for MGTOW? That's pretty much the future. I don't see, first off, MGTOW, by its very nature, men going in their own way, by their very nature, we're highly differentiated people. Unlike something that has a common goal or purpose, or even a structured approach to something like the MRA. It's one reason why I've never officially called myself that, and really shrink back from the term. I've never had any interest in calling myself that, and I just don't identify with it. What is MGTOW at the end of the day here? A bunch of guys who are just going their own way, doing their own thing, but at the same time, highly differentiated. I've seen, just based on comments made by MGTOW men, and even though I can't stand alcohol and never drink alcohol, these are not people I would have a beer with, and I'm using this, euphemistically. Then say I wouldn't want to hang out with these people. I know they're going their own way, and that's probably the only thread we have in common. And I'm not saying that these are bad people. Likewise, there are other guys, and I would love to have a metaphorical beer with, even though I despise alcohol. But my point is that MGTOW, as a concept, I'm not going to call it a movement, as a concept, is composed of a very disparate group of people. And that's why it's even more difficult to make a prediction in the future. What is MGTOW going to become? What's going to happen and so on and so forth. This just seems, it seems almost folly to even attempt to make a prediction with regards to that as anything other than what I've already said. That is to say, there'll be more growth, there'll be more internet blogs and people making videos and what have you. And I think it'll just be more of the same. I mean, I don't think that it's people have said, ever since I made my video about stagnation, people have said that, everything's been said already. And yeah, I would agree to the basic stuff, all of that's been said. There's still a lot to be explored. Now, I disagree with you, Jedi Master Too Cool, say that everything's been said in Evo Psych. Now, it's not in the works because I'm working on something else, but I plan on doing a very detailed analysis and video about male-female sexual relations and reproduction that hasn't been done before, that takes into account medical physiology, Evo Psych, evolutionary biology, cross-species comparison analysis, and so on and so forth. I think there's still a lot more to be said. It's a vast topic, actually. But for the basic stuff, yeah, that's all been said. The problem it really is pretty much, as I said back then. People hate me for saying this, but it's just repeating the same stuff that's already been said a million times. That's not going to make much of an impact in the future. That's going to get people thinking. I know how things are marketed. I know that cheap, accessible, ubiquitous is what people like and they lap up. I also know that people grasp the easy stuff, frankly, a lot more easily, obviously. And that's always what's going to be popular. I know that's just the way it is. I mean, don't get married, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And you can make lots of videos about that and videos about the intricacies of dating as a MGTOW. And okay, that's great. And I know it's popular and appeals to the broad masses of men. We as an online community suffer from all the deficiencies that any other community might. I mean, let's face it, as I said, we have the same issues in the sense that when people make an effort to go beyond the basics, it's just not as appealing to most people. And even though I personally think, it'll get to this later, that any topic that involves human understanding of the world we live in, the universe, or what have you, that's really part of MGTOW. That's almost a definition of MGTOW. Every time Barbarossa, or I for that matter, have made a video that's only tangentially related to MGTOW or not really related, at least in a direct sense that people can relate to, they tend to be a lot less popular. And I know, based on observation of the ongoings of the online MGTOW community, I think you could call it that, community that is, yeah, it's repackaging the same message over and over again as an easy sell. That makes you popular, one, and it sells well and it spreads the basics of the message. Okay. And so to answer your question, that's what we're going to see more of. We're going to see more channels talking about the same stuff that's been talked about a lot. And some men clearly have not yet been exposed to that, and they're not aware of that. And that's good, because that means they're going to get exposed to that. But I have a deep yearning to go beyond that, as you know. Maybe because I've spent a lot of time myself talking about the basics. What's the future of MGTOW? I mean, that's pretty much it. Because that's what MGTOW is, just an online community of guys. Not many, mind you. We're so tiny, minuscule compared to most people, most communities. And we're so different. I mean, we're all very different. Think about the reasons why we choose to go our way. It seems almost uniform. The only thing I think that might be uniform is not getting married. But then again, I think most MGTOW would have gotten married, and I'm someone who never wanted to get married from the get-go. And it never interested me as a concept. I couldn't really understand why people were bothering to it, long before I understood the dangers of divorce. Why would I ever get married? I never really wanted to be a provider. I'm not a fixer-upper. I don't drive. Never interested me. I look all. I'm an atypical male. I think in some ways that's why MGTOW suits me as a concept. And everyone has different reasons for going their own way. And then even in its actual expression, MGTOW takes on different forms. I mean, look at let's take. I mean, I consider Barbaros a friend, even though it's been eons since we talked. Hey man, give me a ring if you can. Just kidding. He's a MGTOW that dates and goes and is involved in a relationship, and that's one version of it. And then you get I'm the kind of more monkish version, and so you get all these kinds of all these kinds of variants. And so there's just no way to go. And moreover, we're not really connected to each other in any way. I mean, we're not conversing on even a weekly basis. We're not engaged in dialogue. We're not in doing meetups. Some of you might remember, this is way back in the day when I was a beginner, and Barbaros has been around forever, so he was well before me. That Barbarossa suggested that men start spreading knowledge amongst each other. Barbarossa still has those videos up. He's very knowledgeable at chemistry. That is not my strength, but and probably not my interest. I've always been more interested in biology. But the point is not whether I'm interested directly in chemistry or not, or periodic tables. The point is that he made, I think, substantially interesting videos about those topics as a part of the MGTOW concept, that is understanding the world and the universe, essentially. And they just kind of, I wouldn't say they met with failure, but they just never appealed to people. That's not what's interesting to people. It's not what, I mean, look, that's just what it is. And that's why I just don't see very much changing the future of men. I mean, you're not going to see a mass change in society without certain conditions being fulfilled. I mean, let's go back to some of the if-then clauses that I had proposed. If sufficient numbers of men, i.e. critical mass, is reached, decide to go their own way, yeah, things could change. I mean, but even then, I see divisions within MGTOW. Not hostilities, mind you, but divisions. There are, indeed, plenty of men going their own way who are one blowjob away. What's one of the major reasons for this? I don't remember which video it is. I've watched every video Barbaros has made. But I do remember him, and I'm paraphrasing, saying, if you cannot, and this is Barbaros is a pimp amongst MGTOW, I mean, as we all know. But as he did say, if you cannot go indefinitely without sex, there's a problem. I want to repeat that and refine that. And this is my own personal view. It's going to conflict with other views, is that the one blowjob away mentality comes from the narcotic-like addiction to sex, as well as this male mother need, which is often all bound up with that. It's sort of tied, it's sort of spaghettied together. And let's face it, men by their very natures are sex addicts. And most men cannot go indefinitely without sex. And by that, I don't mean that, there's some men can't go forever without having sex, because they will yearn for it. The ones who aren't getting laid want to get laid, and so on and so forth. They're not taking that, they're not looking at it from a position of indifference. It's how we got into the situation with Elliot Rodgers, as I talked about. There's a religious, almost ethereal appeal to the sex act. And of course, this joining. I think men deep down think more about some sort of, than women do, mind you, some sort of mystical joining that takes place when you stick your penile organ in the vaginal orifice, or whichever other orifices you choose to. I've never been a fan of anal sex myself, but whatever floats your boat. And some mystic thing happens. I mean, and some men can separate that. But even, here's the deal. It's because of the sex addiction in my humble opinion, that most men, most men going their own way, will always be in that position of one blowjob away, and it takes a mighty strong will. I mean, I think it would take a sort of a mass of Barbarossas. I mean, Barbarossa, as I said, he's someone who engages in relationships, but he can cut it off. You know, he enjoys it for what it is, and he can cut it off. I don't know if most men can do that. I don't think they can. That's my personal assessment of it. On the other extreme end, yeah, what if then, if everyone were like Stardust, and I'm not praising myself in this regard, I'm just giving you a description of my behavior within the MGTOW sphere, had an attitude such as myself in large numbers, it would be significantly more threatening than just men not getting married. I mean, I'm a guy who cannot be tempted with sex, no matter how hot the girl is. Because I always think of the trade-offs. I think about the potential problems that arise from it. I think about the effort that's required for it, and I just think about maybe including foreplay, 40 minutes max. I mean, whatever, and then just losing interest afterwards. The post-com clarity. I think about all these things, and I just think, whatever. It's just whatever. As I say in French, n'importe quoi, which is a stronger form of whatever. So I think one thing that could be done is that men learn to tame their inner beast. This is not me being prude or conservative in this sense. Sex is fun sometimes. You have to be lucky to actually get a good partner. But it's just like everything else, and let's going back to Elliot Rodgers, we need to deplace it from its current position back to what it really should be. It's just another mundane thing. It's like, drinking a drink you enjoy, eating a food you enjoy. Not much better than that, really, if that. This is an addiction that I think can be mastered. You probably watched Barbarossa's video when he talks about the whole bondage thing. Never been into that myself either, for that matter, but whatever. Everyone's different. How he quenched his male mother need. How do I quench my male mother need? I recognize its futility. I recognize it as a wish that cannot be fulfilled. A kind of wishing for God, if you will. It's just, which is never something I've ever wished for. But it's the male mother need is just this something that cannot be sated. It's insatiable, and there's no point even giving it any thought. That's how I quench it. It has no basis in reality as far as the application is concerned. It might be, the desire for it might be there, the comforting wish for some motherly bosom to take over, and then all your worries go away, and blah 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 blah. But there's no execution in reality of that. And when you do think you have that, it's just a simulation. It's a simulation that you're paying for, usually with your labor or your time or both, or your money, or any combination of these things. And it's a simulation that will wear off, that will be turned off the minute you fuck up and make a mistake that said female views as a mistake and then says, well, I'm not going to bother with this anymore. Women know, as Barbarossa said, wants to they know, thanks to their biology, how to turn their dials and the switches. I don't even think about it. I don't think. Whatever yearning I had years ago, this has been extinguished, and it should be. If you want to go your own way, you should. This is all just my opinion. This is Stardust's opinion. If you want to, master the path, if real change were to come about, assuming sufficient numbers, you have to master the inner beast. You have to be, I think, indifferent to sex, which is not the same thing as rejecting it wholesale. I don't reject sex. It's just I'm not going to put any effort in to get it, which might sound like rejection, but it's not, because if some hot chick just rang my doorbell and said, I want to suck your dick and you should fuck me, and then she just left and disappeared forever, I'd do that. It doesn't require much effort, but that doesn't usually happen. So I think that's one thing that could change a lot if men en masse would master their inner beast. But that's not going to happen. We need to be aware of our weaknesses as men. I blowing smoke up your ass and only being praiseworthy of yourself because you're a male, it's the wrong path, because we have things that we can work on too, and this is most certainly one of them. The inner beast. This is a weakness that men have. It is a weakness because it's highly exploitable. What is the power that women have over men? Well, it's basically sex. Yeah, it's the state and blah, blah, blah. Sure, it's sex. If you're indifferent to sex, women have no power over you whatsoever. If you can just walk away from it without your tongue hanging out of your mouth, if you can just be off and do your own thing, no matter what the offers might be, that's power. That's the only power women have over men, really. I mean, let's face it, we're not exactly chasing after them for the sake of incredibly stimulating conversation that's not to be got elsewhere. I mean, let's be honest. So that's something that I think could be a game changer, but that's not going to happen because we know how human beings are. We know how men are. We know how women are. Men want sex. Women give it to them. Blah, blah, blah. We know the rest of the deal. And so, the prostitution, blah, blah, blah. I have no problem with prostitution. I've only been to a prostitute once years ago when I was 18 in Amsterdam. I remember it being a very poor experience. Every time I wanted to do something, you want to touch my tits? Give me, back then it was gilder or gulden or gulden in Dutch. Give me more money. Sex is mechanical, but it wasn't an enjoyable experience. I think that colored my feelings on prostitution in the sense that I would probably never do it again, but that's neither here nor there. The point I'm making is that prostitution is just kind of a substitute. It's kind of a painkiller more than it is a solution. The solution is to master your inner beast. Prostitution is just a painkiller. If you have legalized prostitution, like I said, here it's legal in Germany. Yeah, men, you just go to prostitutes, whatever. And it has positive effects. I mean, I should probably later on talk about this, but there have been studies that show where pornography and prostitution is widely available, but there's less violent sex crime and so on, and less crime in general. Positive effects. That's great. It should be then also implemented, in my opinion. But until men master the inner beast, which is not the same thing as becoming a monk in the name of God and becoming the prince of of abstinence and being abstemious just for the sake of some virtue. It's not, that's not the virtue. The virtue is recognizing really just how plain and mundane it is as a commodity, and then looking at it as any other commodity. You don't want to eat eggs on any given day. You don't eat eggs. That's how most people are. That's what you would do. Although I had eggs and bacon today myself, but I'm ketogenic right now, so it's kind of a staple. You toss aside the eggs. How many men see a pretty girl, they would just toss aside the sex? I remember a while back, man-woman myth, may the gods watch over his soul. I know he no longer makes videos. He made that video where he talked about men in film who just kind of go their own way. There was that scene. It was a 70s film. I don't remember what it was, where this girl is just offering himself to the guy and he's just walking away. Now, that is mastery of the inner beast. I don't think most men going their own way have mastered their inner beast. They're still craving for it. They still want it. And of course, it's only natural. But then again, there are a lot of things that are natural. Wouldn't it be better if we learned how to control that? So that's all I have to say about that particular aspect. And I think it's also the reason why, I don't see a lot of change. We're going to see in the future more of the same. We're seeing more channels popping up, which is good for the most part. People, spreading the basics. We're not going to see, refinement. We're not going to see too much at least of getting into more detailed topics. And we're not going to see a kind of a revolutionary aspect to the online MGTOW community. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I've looked at some of the forums and a lot of it's just bitching about women. That's not what MGTOW is to me. I mean, I want to be descriptive about women. I don't want to bitch about them. And I mean, to be honest, I just think that's lame. If that's the reason why you're going your own way, I mean, it's your life. But man, that's pretty lame just to bitch about women. Try putting some thought into it. Try understanding, what's going on with you and the women you're bitching about at least. But to me, MGTOW is really just about trying to understand the world. And of course, it starts primarily with the male-female human relationship, no doubt. And there's a lot to be understood there, and a lot that's yet to have been understood there. But, every time, if I have a conversation with a friend of mine, someone I consider a good friend, when you watch this, you know who I'm talking about biochemistry. And, I bow my head to you since you're the biochemist, not I. But, I do have some knowledge of it, at least with respects to nutrition. I mean, that's to me, and we've talked about this before, that's MGTOW. That's trying to understand the world, trying to understand what's going on. I mean, what is one key characteristic of the human male? I mean, we want to understand things. We don't just accept things on at face. We don't just say, oh, well, everyone else is doing it, let's go along with that. That's what women do, the Bohr consensus, maintaining that deceptive image, that illusory image of cooperation and harmony just for the sake of it because, the gods know we don't want to not get along. And that's, so we're independent by nature, men. We're differentiated, and we want to understand the world, albeit in many different, ways. I've never been the kind of guy who's wanted to understand the inner workings of a car, even though I think I have a basic knowledge by now. I never was interested in learning how to drive, partly in large measure because my mind tends to wander and I think about a lot of abstract things. The other day I got hit by a bike. Nothing happened, though. He was a really nice guy about it because I was just lost in thought listening to music at the same time while I was taking my daily walk. But on the other hand, growing up, I wanted to be a zoologist, actually, most of my youth. I learned everything there was to know about animals, at least I think I did. Fascinated by things like cheetah locomotion and how that evolved and how, for obvious reasons, they're so differentiated from other cats and what have you. I mean, I've always wanted to understand the world, and I think that primarily is why I'm so drawn to MGTOW, because it's been a quest for understanding above all else. Not just, we're going on strike, the marriage, since I've never given a fuck about marriage anyway, but trying to understand all these different facets of the world. Of course, we can't be interested in everything. No, I'm interested in a lot of things, but not in everything. I told you, I'm not terribly interested in chemistry, biochemistry more so. And I know I could put most of you guys to sleep with the stuff I could talk about with language, which I try to refrain from, since most people don't give a shit about that. I find grammar and things like that just fascinating, but trying to understand the world. That is the MGTOW quest. What should men be doing? I think that was part of the question. Your question, Jedi Master, too cool. Men shouldn't be doing anything but what they want to do. I mean, that's part of it. I mean, it's part of going your own way, is doing what you want on your own terms, defining things on your own terms. The world around us is defined by the male-female relationship. I mean, we even derive our semantic sense of what is something and what something is not by this. Now, I'll give you an example of this. The other day, but a while back in a video I made, some guy got on. He claimed to be going his own way, and pushing 50, telling us that we should listen to love songs and the sacred bond between men and women. I don't know what pipe he was, crack he was smoking. I don't know if he was a troll. And he claimed I was unambitious and that I play video games. There's supposedly some relationship between those two descriptions. Playing video games, unambitious. The playing video games thing, yeah, I'm a gamer. I will probably be a gamer till I die. That's just the way it is, because it's fucking bloody fun, and there are other reasons. There are reasons of significance, meaning, that I don't want to go into here, but I like gaming. Let's talk about this whole idea of ambition. Ambition is defined by the female. Briefo's description, rather than law, I don't like calling it a law these days, but this description of, the female doing the choosing, she also gets to choose some very important semantic terms for humanity. Ambition. I love that word. What is ambitious? Well, when we close your eyes and then try to conceive of ambition, you think of some guy climbing the corporate ladder, making lots of money, always trying to push himself further. Okay. Have you ever thought of an entomologist locked away in a laboratory for decades trying to understand some aspect of ant neurology for 3 decades on a low pay grade, never really climbing the salary ladder, but understanding more and more than he understands perhaps how ants navigate, and maybe there's some application beyond that, maybe there's not. Nobody would call that ambitious. Women wouldn't call that ambitious. Now, remember what I said in my escape philosophy video. Women have assigned no value to intelligence, but for that which it can give them in material goods and resources. A woman who says, "Oh, I like an intelligent man," that's just code for saying, "I like a man who's smart enough to make money and do stuff." What if a boy's lifelong passion became geometry and he comes up with his own theorems, but he's kind of stuck between a $30,000 and $50,000 salary for the rest of his life? He's not ambitious, of course not. He's just trying to understand the intricacies of the geometric universe. But hey, he's not ambitious. So that's another aspect of MGTOW. It's redefining things on your own terms. That's what men should do. They should do whatever they want to do. I've been my entire life, quote unquote, unambitious. I never understood, and I'm going back to look at my previous video on semantics, I think could relate rather to people when I was an undergraduate who were just studying business and these things and medicine, pre-med. They had no interest in biology, really, no interest in medicine, in business or finance. They just knew it would be lucrative and remunerative, and I just didn't understand it. I knew there would be probably be consequences, financial consequences for what I was studying, but even knowing that, my desire to understand the things I wanted to understand at the time was too strong to just drop them and then study something that I had no interest in and didn't want to study at all to begin with, which has always been a hallmark of Stardust. I don't do things well that I'm not interested in. It's one of the reasons I don't want to drive. I would be a danger to you and the rest of the world. No interest in driving. Just one example. So redefining things on MGTOW terms, whatever terms individual men choose, I mean, that's, so getting back to that point, that guy said I was unambitious because I'm not busting my ass in some office trying to make money and climb the corporate ladder or whatever. But I sit at home quietly trying to understand stuff that a lot of people wouldn't, except for specialists. But those specialists might not even be making lots of money. And people study the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, for example. They're not making lots of money. It's funny, I've always noticed, and you've noticed as well, that the things related to understanding the world, even in the hard sciences, are not very remunerative often. A guy studying biochemistry or certain aspects of human endocrinology, that's not going to be necessarily financially rewarding to him. You even see how the world is run. It's run effectively on a gynocentric model. I mean, women, by design, effectively, women create a picture, unconsciously, of course, of what is financially remunerative. Remember the theoretical world that I postulated in escape philosophy? That's never going to come true because men are just too busy doing what is defined and dictated to them by women, and not just on a conscious level, but a subconscious level. Let's imagine a world without that, without that sort of conscious dictation. You would see a very different world. You would see just men, doing what they're interested in. I mean, some men would still pursue things like finance and what have you, but you'd be seeing other men, like I said, studying ant neurology or whatever else it might be. So one important thing about MGTOW, and I think this is something that should go out as a simple concept to be understood. This is not, advanced MGTOW concepts here, but doing things on your own terms and not letting a definition, a preconceived, predefined concept or word such as ambition be defined and illuminated by the rest of the world, i.e., women telling men what's ambitious and what's not. Doing things you don't enjoy, that's something you should not be doing when you're MGTOW. I mean, sometimes it's unavoidable. I know from firsthand experience, obviously. But nonetheless, that's one thing should be avoided. What does the future hold? Jedi Master, too cool. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a prognosticator, I'm not a seer, but I think it's going to be more or less the same for quite some time. I don't think we're going to see a critical mass just because most men are not wired that way. And even within MGTOW ranks, too many men cannot overcome their sex, male, mother need addiction. And so we're just going to, have more and more blogs, forums pop up, possibly channels pop up. And that's it. There won't be any great revolution, any great change. And people want to be told the same thing over and over again. It's like McDonald's, McDonald's for MGTOW, just slightly repackage the message, sell it again. One variant of the cheeseburger, and it's popular. So that's what the future entails, as I see it, for MGTOW. I've talked about the if-then clause scenarios, but they are if-then clause scenarios, and if things continue as they do, which they most certainly will, I don't see great changes coming. As for myself, most likely, assuming my health holds and all the rest of that lovely stuff, I'll just continue my quest for understanding. It's funny, and I should mention this, that I've had every time I speak with Karen in an interview, or we just really have conversations, and I publish the conversation, there's always some criticism of me, not trying to fight the system, and she's trying to do that. And I noticed a number of comments from my last Girl Writes What conversation, where, as is typical for listening to Girl Writes What, the people don't even listen to what she says. Remember, towards the end of that conversation, I asked her, why are you doing this? Is this some Sisyphean task that you've put on yourself that you just have to do it for the sake of some noble pseudo-existentialist reason? No, she says she just wants to understand, and that's all I'm trying to do too. So most of that went just unheard by most people. A lot of them didn't listen. For myself, I'm just going to try to keep on understanding and making videos towards that end, with a view towards understanding the world. And I go on record as saying it's unfortunate that we as MGTOW cannot explore other concepts that I consider part of MGTOW that aren't related to dating women and all this crap that's just not interesting. Why can't Barbara Russell make more videos about chemistry and have them be popular? Well, we know why, because most people aren't interested in that, or really just interested in using their heads for anything. And that goes for most MGTOW, let's be honest. MGTOW are a subset of men, but why can't Barbara Russell do that? Why can't I? I get sometimes requests for continuing, those who watched the history of the English language. I, for many years, was a specialist. I know a lot about the history of the English language. It's called philology. I'm not going to spend all the time making a video like that because it's getting me 700, 800 views. And that's fine. I know people aren't interested in that. But my point is that exploring the world and trying to understand it, for me, that's MGTOW. It's not just, I'm not going to get married because the system is unfair and I could get a girl knocked up. That's almost just common sense by now. So yeah, I'll be continuing my thing. My next video, whenever I get that done, will be just tangentially related to MGTOW, but I think it's a fascinating topic, intricately related to the escape velocity video in many ways, and the chimeras of meaning. I've mentioned that before, so we'll see. Anyway, I think I've said my piece for now. This was totally stream of consciousness, hence the title. So I'll leave it off for here. With any luck, may we speak again soon. Take care.